Alien, undocumented, illegal. All terms used to describe the 11.7 million people who are living and working in America, but who have not been granted citizenship. Throughout this week, we will focus on angles of the immigration debate you may have never considered, what life is actually like for the men and women and children who live in this country in secret. We start at the Texas border, home to thousands of hidden communities.
At night it is dark. Yes, we need public lighting.
And you've been here for how long?
10 años.
10 years, no lights.
No.
Maria Eva does not live in a developing country. This is South Texas, about 5 miles from the Mexican border.
All the water comes here.
Maria Eva lives in the shadows of America, quite literally the dark corners that most people don't even know exist.
The colonias are underdeveloped neighborhoods. They don't have as many regulations as we have in the cities.
Marta Sanchez is a coordinator for Lupe, a community-based union that advocates for low-income families. Lupe is working to improve conditions in the colonias, which typically lack adequate plumbing and sewage disposal, access to clean water, and public lighting.
They don't feel like they have their rights met, and they feel like less dignified as a human being. So that's a thing that happens when people live in the dark areas, and they feel like, well, you know, we're less than the people who live in the city.
You can find colonias all along the southern border in California, Arizona, and New Mexico, but most of them are in Texas. There are nearly 2,300 colonias in the Lone Star State, colonias in which 400,000 people have homes. In Hidalgo County, 1/3 of residents live in colonias, and nearly all of them are Hispanic.
A lot of people that live in the cities do not know that colonias exist. It's like we try to hide it from the society.
More than half of colonia residents were born in America and are therefore U.S. citizens, including 85% of them who are under 18. For those who are undocumented, the struggle is even tougher, living with the reality of being politically invisible and the fear of being legally discovered.
When
they check your documents, I am afraid.
Maria Eva is undocumented but has 4 children who were born here. Do your children know that you don't have papers to be here?
Sí.
Yes, they know.
And are they scared?
They don't know they can separate us, and I would not be with them.
For the men and women of the colonias, undocumented or here legally, their voices and their needs often fall on deaf ears.
The problem with D.C. and Austin is that they don't come over here and meet the people and understand that they're people just like them.
Eddie Cantu is the commissioner-elect for Hidalgo County, and he'll take over in January.
We know a lot of immigrants as our friends, as our neighbors. Hopefully one of these days, people will realize that they're people just like everybody else.
That connection is often what's lost in the debate about immigration. Letty Sanchez is a Colonia resident who came to America more than a decade ago with her husband.
We crossed in a tire in the night.
Sanchez is one of the 11 million people waiting to see if Washington will create a path to citizenship for the undocumented.
Many of the people don't want to do the work that we come to do, like clean homes, mow lawns. So then why are they saying that we should go? If we go, we are not going to keep contributing to boosting the economy here.
Sanchez believes she pays her fair share.
Like many, we pay taxes. We're not here taking free things. Like me, I've never asked the government for help. I've supported myself alone.
Instead, Sanchez and her family have paid even higher costs, ones that come with living here illegally. When one of her brothers was injured in America, her mother wanted to visit from Mexico.
My mother died after she drowned in the river. And when I remember that, I get very emotional. But I think that's the price I had to pay to be here.
For now, Sanchez will remain in the shadows, waiting.
I will never return to Mexico. I'm staying here, and I'm giving the U.S. the bill for that. I'm going to stay, and I'm not leaving until there is legalization for myself and for my children.
Joining me now is the Director of Advocacy and Policy for United We Dream, Lorella Praeli, and from Houston, Celso Mireles, who lives in the United States and does not have legal documentation. Lorella, let me start with you. I was so struck by the conditions in which hundreds of thousands of residents, in specific in this part of Texas, tens of thousands of them, the majority of whom are American citizens and who pay taxes, the conditions in which they are forced to live because some of them don't have papers, and the city and the community feels no reason to give people the basic necessities of American life, including running water, sewage disposal, and street lights. My question to you is, we talk about the two Americas in which people live in terms of the undocumented and the documented, and frequently we think of that in terms of just the workplace, but certainly it extends to residents, to basic, life, basic questions of basic survival. Tell us more about the division you've seen in your work.
I mean, I would say it goes beyond the colonias, to be very frank. My mother has been in this country for 15 years and she's undocumented. And what ends up happening in undocumented families is that you always rely and depend on an intermediary for very basic things like insuring a car, like registering a car, like renting an apartment. So you see that in the colonias, but you certainly see people being taken advantage of and not being able to do things themselves all over the United States, which is why there has been a national push for Congress to take up federal immigration reform, and why there is a push on the president for him to use his executive authority within the confines of the law to bring people out of the shadows, to resource people with work permits, to resource people so that they can insure their own cars, so that they can register their own cars. And there's certainly kind of a deaf ears in Washington. There's this problem and this crisis, and there are 11.7 million people who live in the shadows, and Congress is unable to act, and frankly, the president isn't coming forward with solutions himself either.
Celso, let's talk a little bit about what it is like practically to be in a family where you don't have papers. The thing that I was struck by visiting some of these folks in Texas is at once they so badly want to become citizens, and on the same note, the stakes are so high that if for whatever reason you reveal yourself to be undocumented and your children are here and they were, let's say, American-born citizens, if you don't get that documentation and if you don't get those papers, you face a very uncertain future, and more specifically, your children do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, I grew up with my parents telling me, don't say that you are from Mexico because they're going to say you're undocumented right off the bat. And, just having those identity issues. And also growing up, living with a fear that any given day, my mom, instead of, coming to school to pick me up and take me home, could be stopped by, law enforcement police officers meant to protect and serve the community. Living with that fear growing up, and to this day, still living with a fear. My mom's in Phoenix, Arizona, the land of SB 1070. And I still live with that fear that one day when she's picking up my younger sister, from school, she could be picked up and on a fast track to
let me ask you
deportation.
A follow-up to that. I mean, it would seem to me that in some level that fear of just being taken out of the country, of being deported, almost trumps the desire to get the papers.
Well, fear paralyzes people, and it also it causes. It causes ignorance. It causes people don't trust the system as a result. And it creates just a more unsafe environment. For example, because of the fear of being undocumented, you don't report crime, which means that you live in a more unsafe community. And at that point, it doesn't affect just you as an undocumented person, but it affects American citizens who also live in that community, making the community less safe. So the fact that there is fear in undocumented people is not only a detriment to us as undocumented people, but to people in our communities.
Yeah, Lorella, you mentioned the go-betweens, which is something that I saw a lot of. There was one person who would serve as the interlocutor to get papers or to help with driver's licenses or to help with the things necessary to just go about one's daily life. And that sort of organization is basically just accepted at this point, that if you don't have your papers, there will be someone that sort of helps you out. which is totally untenable and also not fair. I think something that people don't recognize is that according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, undocumented immigrants pay $10.6 billion in taxes, roughly 6.4% of their income. That's not just sales tax, property tax, and at least half of them pay income tax as well.
Yeah, I mean, and what I would say is it's not just, you know, it's people in their daily lives who can't meet their very basic needs on their own. So it's not that someone might just help you out, but that people actually end up taking advantage of this vulnerable status for friends and for family. So if you have to rent an apartment and someone has to sign your lease because you don't have a social security card, maybe every month you have to pay that person $200 in order to be able to do so. So my family and I went through something like that, very similar to that, in the case of insuring our car, where we found out that the person who was insuring our car was actually charging us for his 3 cars. So that is what I call an injustice. These are people, like my mom is ready to come forward. She has come forward, stepped out of the shadows, and has been fighting, pushing for Congress to act, and pushing on the president for him to take action. And so we are ready. We've been ready. We have been contributing, and it's frankly, it is unsafe for the communities. It is not fair to our people, and there needs to be a solution very soon. And we're ensuring that that happens.
To that point, and that we just showed some footage of the house that one of the houses that we walked through in the colonias. Every single major appliance in that house was purchased, was not owned. It was all, they were all being paid for with insane interest rates, and they were basically being borrowed. It is an untenable situation on every single level. Lorella, Praeli, and Celso, Mireles, thank you guys both for your time.
Thank you.